friends and enemies. Welcome back to the CBP, Canadian Bitcoiners Podcast. Happy Carbon Rebate Day. My name is Joey. That's my co-host, Len, partner in crime. What's going on over there, buddy? How the heck are you? Did you get your rebate? You said you didn't get it. We were both talking before the show. No rebates in either of our bank accounts, as far as we know.
I got a haircut, and it's very short, this hair. And thank you to my lovely wife for doing this, because I refuse to pay anybody to do it. I get it for free. I don't care how good or bad it looks. In the end, I'm looking out of my eyes. I don't care what anybody's looking at me.
It doesn't matter. You're married anyway. Like, you could experiment with your hair. What do you care? It doesn't matter. Where's she gonna? She's not gonna leave you. I don't think. Anyway, fuck.
Hey, remember last year? This time it was shaved, and this is close to it. But man, it was shaved, and yeah, I remember how cold it was at that time.
Not today.
I felt every breeze, even above me. I have a register. I was feeling that. Man, I had to wear a hat.
I remember. Yeah.
I still have the hat, so if I have to put it on.
It's beautiful today. Did you golf this week at all? Are you planning on golfing this week? You must be.
I plan on playing Friday. The last Friday we got rained out, and this Friday looks pretty good. So yeah, we have so many coupons, Joey. We have to play every week for the next 3 months before
we have to. We have to play every week.
Have to do it. How about you? You played ball, right? You played football on the weekend?
Yeah, I had 2 games. We lost one, which is fine. And then our other team, the flagship team, beat a team of 20-year-old guys. That was probably one of my proudest moments, beating a bunch of kids who are playing. A few of them play CIS. It's a good team. And age is just a number, buddy. As long as you drink enough water and go to bed early enough, you can get it done for an hour. What's that saying? You may not be as good as you once were, but you're as good once as you ever were, right? That's how it felt on Saturday night.
Gordie Howe played until he was 51, and he still was close to a point per game player at that age. He was gray-haired, but still he was tough as nails, and anybody that came near him or his sons was going to feel the pain because he played with his sons too.
Love it.
On the same line, nonetheless.
I love it. The LeBron James method, eh? He's waiting to play with his kid next year. Hopefully, anyway.
2 kids he played with.
That's nuts. That's nuts. I can't believe that. Get some housekeeping here. Maybe we could start with that. First, though, the sponsors. EasyDNS, best place, guys, for you to do all your website hosting, your registrar needs. Mark can take care of all of it. He's doing our website where you can read the week that was in the CBP as far as the research roundup, and the week that's coming as far as Lens updates for show topics and all that other good stuff, all on CanadianBitcoiners.com. Elsewhere on EasyDNS, VPS, virtual private server stuff. So if you want to do a BTC Pay server, Nostr Relay, you want to do a Bitcoin node, you got some kind of store, you want to sell stuff. I see Hodler's official in the chat. I don't know why you're not using Mark. If you aren't, but you should be. And we've really benefited a lot from his services, and he's opened our eyes to a lot of things that we were doing wrong and things we could do better. And I encourage you to check out our website. And of course, if you want to head over to EasyDNS and start doing whatever it is you're looking at firing up, Mark will help you. Use the code CBP Media. Is that the code? I forget now. But
CBP Media is indeed the code.
CBP Media. Or just tell him we sent you, or just message him in the chat, or go up to him on the street if you see him. Whatever. He's always willing to help. I think I said last week, somebody messaged me, a viewer of the show messaged me and said they were trying to fire up a domain name and they're having a little trouble. Mark jumped into action right away. The man himself, truly the bat signal style response to any trouble with EasyDNS. So can't beat it, man. Head over there and whatever it is you're thinking about doing, never a better time to start than right now. Who else we got?
Bull Bitcoin. Let's talk about Bull Bitcoin because there's some news on that front. Before I talk about that news, let's look at the offering which they provide people, their customers, you and I, Joey, and our listeners and viewers.
Yes, sir.
You can buy your Bitcoin. You can sell your Bitcoin with Bull Bitcoin. You have those 2 options. On-chain, fees are going up. So what do they give you? You got the ability to buy and sell with Lightning. Think about that, folks. Lightning is super cheap when you transact in, and they give you that option that you could start using fees. Well, we'll talk about what's going to happen with the fees later on in today's show, but Bull Bitcoin, they give you so many different options. Also with that, you could pay your bills with Bitcoin. So if you have some Bitcoin, you made some massive gains, and you want to start using that to pay some of your bills, Bull Bitcoin will facilitate that. So if you have to pay your hydro bill, you have to pay your car payment, whatever the heck you got to pay, you could use Bull Bitcoin to pay your bills with your Bitcoin. You'd also buy gift cards through Bull Bitcoin with your Bitcoin. And with that, you are then indirectly spending your Bitcoin in the real world, living on the Bitcoin standard, just the way Satoshi wanted you to do. And the thing that they have still to this date, today was supposed to be the last day, but it's been temporarily postponed because of Canada Post and some technical glitches. I believe it's supposed to end in sometime in May. I don't know the exact date, but KYC free buys. Go to Canada Post, load up your accounts over there with Canadian dollars, and well, with that you could buy you could buy Bitcoin KYC free. So this was supposed to come to an end today, April 15th, but due to technical issues with Canada Post, this has been delayed until at least sometime in May. Shoot, I wish I had the date handy, but I don't have it specifically. I don't know the specific date. Anyways, use our promo code below if you haven't already signed up. If you do that, $21 is going to be added to your account once you fund it and provided necessary information.
I want Bitcoin.ca. It's a place to go. So housekeeping. Tomorrow, Plate Licking Pleb will be here in studio around 5 p.m. for a rip with yours truly. We'll be talking conference. We'll be talking, I don't know, whatever else. Probably some fitness talk too, since he's on a tear when it comes to his personal fitness over the last year or so. And whatever else we discuss, I'm sure it'll be worth your time. So stop in, listen over dinner, ignore your wife while you're eating your steak, and listen to Plate and I instead. And then Wednesday we have, I want to say Taurus, Kulik, Sunnyside Digital, right?
Yeah. So they're based, at least their office is based out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And they're helping businesses with hardware solutions for setting up their mining operations, data centers, all that stuff. So it's kind of in line with what I've been talking about for the past little while. And look forward to chatting with him about this and learning about Sunnyside Digital and what it is that they offer, because this is something, if they're providing equipment to large data centers, I want to learn about this, and hopefully you'll learn something too. Yes.
Next week, Len, Tom Karadza coming to the studio with his son, Aiden. We're going to be doing a multi-generational podcast rip. I've heard Aiden, start cutting his teeth on the Your Life, Your Term show once or twice over the years. So I'm looking forward to talking to the two of them and hearing what they think, and also maybe telling Aiden that I need a guy for my Wednesday night football league. I don't know. He's pretty tall. I wonder if he's athletic. We got to find out. I got the football here in studio. We'll just play catch in the park or something before the show or after the show.
You gotta show all the dynamics of the game. It's simply just throwing a football and catching it is just one aspect.
I take care of most of it. I'll take care of most of it. I need a guy who can run and get open. That's what I need.
You need somebody with speed, quickness, stamina, and the ability to follow instructions. So there's a lot of different things you got to do. And I guess there's some mental toughness as well, right? Like, is it tackle or is it?
It's touch. I mean, you do get hit. I got hit pretty good on the weekend.
So, did somebody break a bone? Not too, like you were mentioning to me.
Oh yeah, I mean that happens pretty frequently. There's a guy on my team. This is a little off the beaten path. There's a guy on my team.
Used to work. You work with him. I used to work with him, right?
Yeah. 15 broken bones there. I've been hit a couple times below the knees. Like I missed a game earlier this year because a guy rolled into me while I was throwing. I've seen a guy lose teeth a couple times. I have a buddy actually who a few years ago in a collision had one of his front teeth, I should say, stuck in another guy's forehead. Just absolutely brutal. So yeah, but it is touch on paper, as far as insurance goes. So anyway, yeah, we'll find out. It's going to be a big week, man. Big week for us, big week for CBP, big week for Bitcoin too. Obviously, we'll talk about the halving a little bit tonight, I'm sure. With all that said, Boost, got any?
Let's do the boost. That's a good idea. So Goose boosts 100 sats. Goose 100 sats. But he says nothing. He writes nothing. So he just puts the Mo BTC Dick replied to that. Says, "Don't be shy, Goose." So I'm going to give Mo BTC so Goose. I mean, write something. I'll be happy to read it, man.
That's great.
Thank you for the boost.
Love it.
Gordon 313 stats. He writes in the last 15 minutes when Bob was talking about ASICs are more than just Bitcoin. Got me thinking how I need to explore how random, verifiable, generated numbers can help the common person. So yeah, I know that he was talking about. I'm not sure if you listened to that part, Joey, where it's just going to be doing something to do with randomly generated numbers and using ASICs in order to do that.
I didn't get all the way through it, but I mean, I like at least that he's not talking about stuff like, a lot of these other miners talking about nonsense, honestly, with the ASICs they have because they're so in over their head. But anyway, Bob is really sharp. It would not surprise me if he found other uses for his ASICs. That's for sure.
And he said he'll come on anytime. So if ever you want to chat with him about,
he's been incredible. Like we didn't give him enough dapperly because we had a scheduling hiccup, I think, last week. I can't remember exactly what it was, but the guy comes on for 2 hours on basically no notice, and he's just full of juice, man. He's all gas, no brakes. You can't get that anywhere.
He's an absolute gem, and I'm thankful that he's friendly with our show, because, like I said, anytime he wants to come on and just chat anything, even if he wants to talk Milwaukee Brewers baseball, Green Bay Packers football, I'll sit there and listen and try to chat. But anyways, Duggan Roop, 1,000 sats, writes in, love feeling like I was part of the live show, even though I caught a bit of it. Don't tell the fam, but that was the high point of my holiday. Incredible.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, Doug. It's always good. The chat is always buzzing on YouTube, which is great. And we said this before, but one of the best things about the show is that there's this little like petri dish of people who don't know each other, except for that they listen to us on Mondays and Wednesdays. And in the chat every week, it's the same people asking each other how they are, how things are going. They're always welcoming to new people. You can't beat it. You can't beat it. So I'm glad you came, and I hope you can make it again sometime soon.
The Bitcoin Viking, 1,000 sats. Now, I kind of want a CBP underwater basket weaving certificate for my wall in the office. We got to print those. We got to sell those, Joey. Official CBP issued underwater basket weaving certificates. They have no real world value. So.
I would love to do that. My wife has her hands full with work, but there's a few things in the works here in the creative studios. One is a gold machine gun index suit. I love that. We done a velvet suit, a gold machine gun index shirt, and the other I would do the underwater basket weaving thing if you wanted. Just print a few certificates or just send them out. People with the biggest boost every week will just send you a certificate or something. I don't know.
A good idea.
Yeah, we can do that. We'll figure it out.
Bitcoin plus food, 2,500 sats. He was the big chief this time around. Have all my sats. Hallelujah! At last, UBI works. Give me a basic income so I can live as a simple human being and release my creative potential. Joey, I'm not sure how much feedback you got from that last interview with Floyd Marinescu.
Marinescu, yeah. Did you listen to it? I know we don't listen to each other. So you listened to it. What did you think?
I think you pushed back a little bit. I wish you pushed back a little harder, but I understand why you didn't. But some of what he said, I just wanted to go through the speaker and just
okay. I agree with what you're saying. There's sometimes I think that when we have guests, and we talked about this like 2 years ago, when the show started to get a little traction, people were mad when we were pushing back. I'm not going to argue with people on the show. I think that Floyd and I disagree on some things. I told him that before the interview, I told him during the interview, and I told him after as well. But I gotta say, there's some people who have, and I said this during the show too, but for those who didn't hear, there's some people who have ideas about how things should be and how they should work, and no skin in the game. They have no skin in the game. They've not planned anything. They've not proposed anything, but they are the loudest. They are the screechiest voices in the room all the time. You know exactly who they are. Oftentimes it's like politicians or, business people who just they're not going to be affected by the things that they're proposing. Floyd is not like that at all. He is going to be directly affected by the things he is proposing. And I appreciate that about him. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have him on. The other reason I want to have him on is because I think he's onto something with the value tax. I don't know about the UBI thing, but I think he's onto something with the value tax. You're shaking your head. What do you think?
Well, let's just run through this. What if there was a land value tax that would be instituted? And I was assume that it'd be a phased-in approach. You wouldn't reach maximum taxation within, year one. That's what I'm assuming. I'm trying to be realistic here. But even if you do a phased-in approach, let's just play it out. What do you think is going to happen with the value of land and homes?
Yeah, it'll start to decrease a bit.
Okay, now if that happens, let's look at how much of the Canadian economy is reliant on the real estate sector. In some provinces, it's somewhere as high as 20%. Yeah. Now, you're basically telling those 20% that's contributing a great deal to those provinces and to the nation as a whole, it's going to be scaled back. So all the people that are in it, impacted with it, they're now probably going to be on the UBI because, the majority of them, some of them will have transferable skills to go to a different industry. But now you're basically increasing the amount of people that are going to be on either GBI and UBI. And you're going to try to have those people that are now newly added to the group of people that are the have-nots to try to have it all fed with taxation, or mostly fed through taxation of real estate. Now, if you're going to go through this whole rigmarole to modernize the economy, because let's be honest, by doing this is a radical way of finding new taxation dollars. if you're going to do this, why not just, you're going to torpedo it? Okay, let's torpedo it, but let's go with the hard money. Let's use gold or Bitcoin to back it up. So if you're going to do it, let's not do it half-ass. Let's do it with our whole ass and do it the right way.
I think you have a point there. Yep.
And if I have to say one more thing, if you're ever going to do something, this is low-hanging fruit. I don't believe this is what should be done, but this is something that could be done. I think this is the easiest way to get taxation dollars from land, is taxing primary residence the same you do with you tax rental property.
Put cap gains on it. Yeah.
So I don't agree with that, but I think that's probably the more likely and the least impactful compared to what he's suggesting. It won't generate the same amount of tax dollars, but certainly it would have a impact on the real estate sector. Probably not as severe, but you will be able to generate a whole bunch of new tax dollars as a result. That's my
I think he, like, it's not that I don't agree with you. I think I do agree, but the thing is, like, the approach that he wants to take is property taxes eliminated, income taxes eliminated, and you just pay on land value for a while. Now, the thing that you mentioned there is one that I didn't bring up, but it's funny. My dad was here shortly after the interview. He stopped by just to see what we're up to, my wife and I, and we were talking about it, and he mentioned some of the same things. But I will say that one of the things I still don't agree with Floyd on, and you mentioned this too, right? Why go half-ass and not just whole-ass? Ultimately, boomers are doing what any rational person, I think, would do, and they have to be in an asset that's going to protect them from the debasing currency, and the currency debasement's not going to stop. I mean, we were chatting before the show, and I was saying that I was reading some of these bank economic forecast budget preview letters. The spending is going to continue until morale improves, and there's not going to be any attempt to regulate the demand side of any of these bubble markets in Canada, whether it's the oligopolies and these sorts of things they get away with there, or real estate or whatever. There's not going to be any room for discussion about demand. It's all, or supply, I should say. No, demand. It's they're not going to temper these things. The point I think that Floyd makes that's strong, even if I disagree with some of the details, we have to get away from the GDP revolving around us selling houses to each other. We have to. And it's becoming more and more clear that we have to do it. The longer we wait, the more painful it's going to be. Now, the question for you and me ultimately is, like, how much pain do you want to subject yourself to? I wouldn't mind seeing a rollout of this the way he described it, where, like I said, you'd basically eliminate property tax, eliminate income tax, just pay your land value tax. If you're a boomer, you can delay the payment until you sell your house, so you don't feel that pain. And it does force turnover. I think ultimately the other thing that he doesn't get right, and it's not for lack of understanding the problem. I think he does understand the problem, but I don't think he's looking at it the right way, is land value. When he talks about how, land value that's accrued is accrued outside of any work done to proliferate that land value, right? To increase the value of the land. The house I own, for example, goes up in value $20,000 a year. What did I do? The land went up in value. I would argue that's actually not the case. I would argue that the people who live in the area do something, oftentimes by doing nothing, to increase the value of property. There's no crime. There's no problems. There's a sense of community here. The longer people stay, the more stable the neighborhood becomes, the more value the land has, because there's people who are well-to-do and stuff like that. I would argue that accrual is based on human action, even if the action is taking no action. And I think that there's something to that. And I would argue as well that at the end of the day, the more sort of prescient thing to do, and the thing that would cause less pain but still produce a similar outcome in terms of affordability, we have to talk about the spending side. Stop spending money on dumb shit, at the sort of 3 levels of government, and start spending it on services that bring people who need houses to communities. If I look at downtown Hamilton, there's tons of services there for new Canadians, for low income people, for people who are trying to buy their first home, get their first job, whatever, but they can't live there. And so that causes a problem. Start sending those services out to, I don't know, Grimsby, to Waterdown, to whatever, right? These places that are a little more rural, a little less dense in terms of population, and you fix some of these problems. Now, there's a discussion to be had, and I don't want to go on too long here. This is a discussion to be had about what you can and can't force newcomers to the country to do. I would say you can force them to do any goddamn thing you want if you want to come here. That's the rules. we can do whatever we want with you when you show up. You can't move to the GTA. You can't move to Hamilton. You can't move to Vancouver, and you can't move to the NCR. You have to move somewhere else, somewhere rural, somewhere where they need work, where there's going to be new services. And I think people who speak against that would say, well, you're putting the cart before the horse. What choice do we have? We've tried the other way. It doesn't work. And these are difficult conversations because you're ultimately, I think, you're othering a certain variety of people, but this is the nature of the game at this point. We have to be realistic about what's happening, why it's happening, and who it's happening to. And if we don't do that, then we're never going to have a conversation. But like I said, I'm happy that Floyd came on because I think it was a bit off the beaten path for him to do a show like that, where we are about hard realities and just facts on the ground. And I'm glad that he, I think, had some answers to some questions that were not expected, a little bit difficult. And I think overall it was a good conversation, which is all I could really ask for. Talking to somebody who I have some agreement with, but more disagreement.
Joey, I think we've discussed long enough about everything up until this point. We still have a Bitcoin show to talk about. And, I think it's time. And there's this first story I want to talk about. I really want to hear your point of view of this, because this is something, I'll be honest, I don't really have a fucking opinion, because it's a drama between Odell and Saylor. And for people that are unaware, this is something that's been dominating Bitcoin Twitter, or X Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days. But the crux of this is that Odell wrote that one of the Bitcoin ETFs, the one that was recently approved, one of them just a few months ago in the US, they were considering to donate to open source projects. And while Saylor, as Odell says, intervened. And in the wording of Odell, he says that Saylor would crush them. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but as a result of that threat, apparently that ETF didn't decide to go ahead with those type of donations. But anyways, adding fuel to this rumor mill over here is Jack Dorsey piped in and threw out the name of ARK. Now,
Kathy.
I have no skin in the game. I have no idea what the hell is going on. And like I said, I don't even have a fucking opinion about this, but I'm pretty sure you do, because I love to hear your thoughts of this, because you listened and talked to Odell. So you have at least a connection with him. And you listened to TFTC for a number of years.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite shows.
So, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. I mean, is Odell right? Is he wrong? Is Saylor right? Or neither of them right? I want to hear.
I haven't heard Saylor's reasoning, so I don't know. Someone pulled an episode of some podcast that he did 3 years ago about basically why he's in the ossify now camp. I understand why he wants to ossify if that's his stance, but I'm not convinced that it is at the moment. In terms of, should the ETF providers be funding open source projects? I don't know. I mean, Len, you and me talk on this show all the time about dark money coming in. I'm sure tonight we'll talk about runes, whatever Rodimer's latest thing is. And one of the questions you're going to ask during that segment is who's paying for this stuff, who's funding it, why is there so much publicity, stuff like that. I think if you really feel that way about stuff like runes or ordinals, you should feel that way about public funding for developers. The ETF guys have a vested interest in the status quo. They're, at the end of the day, I think, still defensive in nature and want stuff like ossification, where me and you may not agree with that, or other Bitcoiners may not agree with that, this ossification now thing. And so I don't know what Saylor's point of view is. I find it difficult to believe that he is against funding open source projects, when if I look back, several years ago, I think he committed like $250K to some open source project, maybe not development, but some other Bitcoin adjacent work. I think broadly, Len, this probably doesn't matter, but I'm going to go. I didn't listen to TFTC last week. I should listen to it. I totally forgot about what was going on with this thing, but
it dominated Bitcoin.
It did.
Twitter,
I know it was
for
big
a period of time.
It was big for like a day, which is, a year in internet time. And I don't know, like Odell, on the other hand, is saying, well, like every week he's asking people to fund open source developers, which I get. But he must realize, I'm sure he realizes, and I'm sure he talked about this on TFTC without even listening. I'm sure he talked about it, that there is a balance to be struck between making sure developers can have a career, working on Bitcoin, which is what we want, people protecting the network, protecting the asset, and making sure they're not being influenced by big money. There's never been money like this in Bitcoin before. You say what you want about Kathy Wood or Van Eck or, Fidelity, whatever. these guys got firepower for days when it comes to what they can do with funding and whatnot. And they have priorities, they have agendas, they have things that they want to put at the front of the line when it comes to development or ossification or whatever. You got to be careful. That's all. I don't know. I don't know how else to wrap this up except to say that we need to hear what Saylor says. And I would expect in the next couple of weeks he'll do another podcast. He's about due. It's been a few months since he did a podcast appearance or a YouTube video or whatever. So let's hear what he says about it. If he truly is anti open source development support, then let's hear why. The other thing I was thinking, like, you kind of need, even if he is ossifying now, you kind of need developer support to push that agenda forward too, right? Even if the support is basically a strong dev or a couple of devs saying, yeah, we don't want to add anything new to this, unintended consequences, blah, blah, blah. Look back at what happened with Taproot. This is like it's the same kind of campaign, whether you want to stay in place or continue moving the protocol in a certain direction. So I have a hard time seeing why he wouldn't want to support it anyway. So let's see exactly what the nature of his argument is and then decide. Like, you don't care? I guess you said you don't have an opinion. I'm surprised because you've been pretty strongly opposed to some of the stuff that's happened on Bitcoin in the last little while. That stuff has been the result of support from maybe shadow money, maybe not, maybe some regular standard money from people who we know and have talked about and maybe even talked to. So I don't know. The chat's buzzing here.
Well, it really is. A lot of this is so far outside my control. And the reason why I really don't have an opinion is because I am guilty of donating to developers that I've liked, be it Bitcoin core developers or even projects
or
that
others.
are
Yeah,
related.
of course. Yeah.
And I've done this. And I'm going to be perfectly honest here. I'm a fucking, in the grand scheme of things, I'm nothing. In terms of what I own and what I donate is fuck all. But if I'm doing it and it's not life-changing what I'm donating, but it's a token of my appreciation of the work that they are doing or what they plan to be doing, just because of the ideas they have and what they're trying to develop and what it is they talked about to date. I'm sure other people with far more capital behind them, like Bitcoin, for instance, they're doing the same as I am and doing the same thing. Now, it's not to say that people are only funding things that are good for Bitcoin that I choose that are good for people are funding everything. And that's fine and dandy. Like, this is the reality of it. This is capitalism. You like something, you buy it, you fund it, you go from there. The unfortunate thing with we're talking about capitalism today is the money, unfortunately, that is being used could potentially be just created out of thin air, not something that is generated through proof of work. So if it's created out of thin air, then it's easy to sway, or at least attempt to sway how things are going to be developed. But me being a node runner gives me a little bit of power in terms of what I want to verify in terms of my own idea, what I think is Bitcoin. And if there's ever a change in focus, I mean, I could run whatever I want. I have that ability and I can just go my merry way. So I have, in my opinion, a heck of a lot of power, and a lot of other people have that power too. We experienced this in 2017. We had big money, powerful players involved. And who won in the end in that war? It was the people it was the plebs. It was the people that had the ability to run the fucking software. And they kept it like that. They're still able to run the software with virtually, with fairly modest specs. So I'm just going to leave it at that. That's why I don't have much opinion. A lot of this is so far outside my control. What happens, but I'm going to control what I can do. I'll run a node and I'll make sure that I'm supporting the protocol I like.
I'm talking to all caps in the chat, and he's talking about how it's like Dorsey's camp versus Saylor's camp. Dorsey is open sats, Saylor is not. And Saylor's the MSTR thing. Like, they're a Bitcoin development company now, right? So maybe that's another moving piece here. I hadn't really considered, because they haven't done anything. There's been no like results, right, from that camp. Yeah, but there will be
presumably. We could expect that to be the case. It could just be vaporware too. It could just be always the carrot being dangled in front of us is a turtle carrot, and hey, where is it? What is it?
I don't know. I think we got to wait and see where some of the chips fall here. But it's interesting that this quickly there's already basically a dispute between, maybe the preeminent Bitcoin maximalist and the preeminent fiat facing Bitcoin guy, right? And that says something to me, and it's an example of what we're seeing in a few other places, maybe not as severe and not as publicly visible, but they're starting to become they're starting to show fault lines are starting to appear basically between a couple of different camps in Bitcoin on a couple of different fronts. I'm sure we'll talk about a few of them tonight.
I think now is a good opportunity to just at least touch upon ruins. And we discussed a little bit more. I don't want to get too much into the
I thought for sure you were going to call them ruins just for the shits and giggles.
That's
but
actually
I guess not.
I can't believe I fucking missed it. But anyways, ruins. Anyways, they're built. This is what Casey Rodimer says. This is straight from his tweet. I'm not fucking pulling this shit out of my ass. He says that ruins were built for degens and meme coins, but the protocol is simple, efficient, and secure. So he's basically outlining this is for people that are just doing meme coins and fucking people just want to roll the dice.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I'm bringing this up now is because this stuff, Casey's the dude that was behind the whole inscription / ordinals fiasco. And if anybody recalls, it drove up the price of, partially drove up the price of fees, BRC20 tokens too. So in terms of ordinals and inscriptions, he's the guy that was, I would say, instrumental for at least spawning this to the world. And now this thing is going to be the same type of thing, and it goes live on the date of the halving. So the date of the halving is expected to be on April 20th, give or take a day or two. I'm not sure, a day actually, probably not two. So this, if you look at the transaction fees right now, the miner fees, they've been steadily going up. I don't know if it's in anticipation of this going live or anything, but I suspect if you have not consolidated your UTXOs, and I've been banging this drum for quite some time, it could be worse. It could be worse for a period of time. I don't think there's going to be a sustained, and forgive me if I'm wrong on this, this is not financial advice. I don't think there's going to be a sustained, high 3 figures or even 4 figures sats per VByte.
Yeah, me neither.
It may happen that it may be for a period of time, a brief period of time. Eventually, the fees come down. It takes some time, but fees do come down over time. But the only thing I would say, if you haven't yet done consolidation of your UTXOs, and if you think that right now the fees are manageable, you want to stomach it, my suggestion is at least look at the option of doing it now. Do your own research, of course, because things get really dicey in the future. And if it does, for how long? I don't know. But even All Caps is saying open some Lightning channels, which makes sense because that gives you the ability to transact in a relatively cheap environment after you open your channels. But man, this is going to be problematic, I think, for at least a few weeks right after the halving. And it will take some time, but we will get to a cheaper fee environment. But how long it will take could be a couple of months.
I'm just looking at this Rodamore tweet. Yeah, man, I think this is it's stupid. It is stupid. There's no other way to describe it. It's for degens, and he says as much. These guys they're not using Bitcoin for what you and I want it to be used for. They're within the rule set, fine. But to your point, Len, I think the thing for even the people who are the most hyped on runes, whatever this is, it's like shitcoins, I guess, like these Solana tokens basically, but moving to Bitcoin. Some of the Solana tokens are hilarious, by the way. I can't repeat them on the air, but I definitely recommend checking them out. The thing that I think we can take some solace in is that you'll remember how just in your face, popular, screechy the ordinals people were when they first took off, right? It was huge. Everyone was talking about ordinals and inscriptions. This is going to be the next big thing. We're bringing people to Bitcoin. It's going to support fees, blah, blah, blah. That was all horseshit. It all died down, over the course of 3 months. Then you get a wave again, then it dies down again. Then you get a wave again, then it dies. I think that is broadly done. And again, one of the things I'm curious about is how much is Casey making on this stuff? He's certainly making change in the rap lyric sense. He's making money. I don't know why I said that. I know he's making money. He's making money on Hell Money podcasts, I think, because they just had French Montana on. And
no.
If you have rappers, hang on. If you have rappers doing your podcast talking about runes and inscriptions and shit like that, you've fallen away from what you're supposed to be doing, I think, as a Bitcoin dev. And again, this is coming from me, and I'm of the two of us, I'm the softer on whether or not inscriptions people should be allowed to walk the streets or consume, energy in their homes or whatever else, right? Like I think you want them hanging, but me, I don't really care. I just think this is dumb. It's like he's like onboarding or trying to onboard people who I view as just generally kind of stupid. Like, how many times are you going to fall for this? It's another
Bitcoin
huge
magazine.
thing.
That's all I have to say.
I'm going to ask Dave and Mark about it. I have to, because they're talking about it, and I want to know, like, do you guys not see the problem? Do you think there's a problem? Like,
no.
Well, let's
they
find
do
out.
Not.
We got to find out. I want them to steal it for me. And
it's, you know what? Somebody could say something. It's the actions that truly matter. And the actions that they are fucking doing right now is they have a marketplace for ordinals. They're actively trying to sell their own pictures of covers of the Bitcoin magazine. So these are actions that prove that they fucking believe in this stuff, and they want to find a buyer of last resort for the garbage.
I'm not sold on that. I think that explanation is too simple. I think, like I said before, I think there's a lot of things they could do that would be way worse in terms of funding the operation. And they do that because it's the most palatable thing for the most Bitcoiners. Let's be honest.
So
let's be honest.
Somebody out there goes and robs a fucking bank instead of murdering somebody. It could have been a lot worse. They could have fucking did a far worse crime. But you know what? When you did a fucking crime that impacted people, you're a fucking loser.
That's true. But the ordinals aren't a crime. And I think that there's like a very
criminal in the eyes of this Bitcoiner.
It's a very small number of Bitcoiners that care. That's another thing, right? It's another thing we have to admit. And I'm not saying that it's worse or better or whatever. I think a lot of people should care. And it shows that Bitcoin is not matured to the point where people who are invested in the network's success are looking at things and forming opinions based on relevant information a lot of the time, unfortunately. But to me, again, like, we're not going to agree on this tonight, but I do think we agree on one thing, that Casey is just like, he's going for the lowest common denominator again here, right? And this time he's just not even trying to hide it. With the ordinals thing, he was at least saying, oh, it's going to support fees. It's going to, increase network security. But like now he's saying the quiet part out loud. It's for degens and gamblers. And he's going to for sure have a token that he dumps on everybody if he hasn't already. Good luck, man. Enjoy. But, you're going to wind up with less Bitcoin. In a lot of cases, if you play these stupid games, what do you win? Stupid prizes. So good luck. Have fun. But I wouldn't be doing anything with this stuff.
Nor will I. I think
by the way, there's going to be people in your life who are like, oh man, I made tons of money on this stuff. You should, like, almost all those people are going to be lying. They've spent tons of time. They invested tons of their own resources. They're not telling you about the shit they got dumped on. They're not telling you about the losses. Mm-hmm. You make of this what you will. Okay. We talked about this before, I think, Glenn. It's like the guy who spends every weekend at the casino and every weekend he wins. Like, buddy, nobody believes that. It is just pure insanity that you keep saying this.
There may be the 1% of 1% that may be doing this. I'll give the odds that there's possibly one diamond in the rough that could actually do this. But the reality is most of the people are just losers.
Long term, like, you got your reputation to think about. You got your sanity. You got, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm the crazy one, but I just don't care. Like, I don't give a shit, honestly, about this stuff. It's like, it's just on the peripheral to me. It's going to fade away like every other fad. And then if he comes with something again, we'll talk about it again. And I'll have the same opinion that he somehow managed to find even a lower IQ rung to target in the Bitcoin space. The other thing too, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Is it Bitcoiners really jumping on this stuff, or are people coming over from other chains to grab ththese tokens and start BRC20s and do all this shit?
Well, why not? I mean, we could look at, there's a funny Solana story that I wanted to bring up, for instance, where this dude, and I'll just talk about this quick and we'll go back to your question.
Sure.
He was upset because he's in Solana, he has this meme token and $54,000 worth, 54K USD, by the way. And because of congestion, it's not allowing him to sell. He's been trying for some time to get rid of it, but it's because of issues with Solana, he's not able to do it. Now,
Sloana doesn't work.
Sloana. Now, something like that, and a lot of people listening to this or looking at that, say, you know what, I could work on this on Bitcoin. That network, it's been 10 years since there's been any outage. Yeah, I'll do it over there. And then it doesn't matter if I spam that network. Who gives a shit about everybody else? But yeah, it's going to drag in people that are quote unquote not Bitcoiners. Now anybody could buy in Bitcoin or not. It's just the usage of it and the way it's being used like that. I'm a node runner. I don't want to have that garbage on my node. That's why I fucking run a filter on filter. That's why I edited the Bitcoin.conf to get that shit out of the mempool of my node. So, I have some skin in the game with respect to what I'm doing with my node and how that's being redistributed through the network, the Bitcoin network. So yeah, it's going to bring in these people for better or for worse. And as a result, it's going to make fees much higher if they continually spam the network. But the only good thing about all this, there is one silver lining. It gives us an opportunity to figure out what happens in a high fee environment, because without this, we wouldn't have had these very high fees. And maybe there may not be development on things that help during high fee environments. Not to say that everything that they're being developed right now is good, but it's opening up people's eyes, and maybe they're funding things that are deep to be decent, like Lightning, for instance. And I know Lightning has limitations with its capabilities. It's not scalable given right now. I know channel factories could potentially make it scalable, but we need stuff like that. Not the shit that's going to be like side chains and shit. Like we need stuff that's actually Bitcoin. It gives people the ability to fucking transact with it cheaply and still have to manage your own Bitcoin. And I guess with this high fee environment, it's going to give people an opportunity to look at options, build upon them, and maybe fund some of these things. Let's accelerate that thing.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's a good silver lining. We talked about that before. I think that's true. I don't know, man. The other part of me is like, are these people who are playing around with these tokens ever going to be Bitcoiners anyway? Like, probably not. That was the other thing Rodimer was saying. Like, we're going to get people into Bitcoin via the sound money, or sorry, via the shitcoin stuff, and then they're going to be addicted to sound money. Like, I doubt it. The guys who are trading Greta's Milkers token on Solana are not coming over to Bitcoin for Austrian principles. Like, they're not going to go read Mises after trading Geo Bowden or whatever. It's just not going to happen. These people are not, they're not like us,
I like the Elizabeth Warren one. I'm not going to say what it is, but she's my favorite. I like her. You know what? Do you think she's going to be around in terms of elected official in, say, 2 terms? She's in her mid 70s right now. So she's going to run for this one for sure.
Yeah.
And if she
could,
wins,
I mean, what about, like, she's going to go Feinstein?
I don't think so.
Like, literally die in office. That's so fucking weird.
Like, I personally think she understands that there's more to life than being a politician. And, there comes a point in time in somebody's life, they look in the mirror and say, it's just not worth it.
And you finally embrace your true calling.
Whatever it is. I mean,
slurping at the heels of big banks.
Hey, man, she could do what she wants. She is a lawyer by trade, I believe.
Yeah.
So, whatever. All the more power to her. She'll do great on speaking engagements because, given her pedigree, what she's done in politics, and she's ran for president, right? At least tried to become.
Yeah, she can finally take private jets without hiding behind her more portly staff members upon her departure. Yeah,
I like Liz Warren. Let's talk about something I think you've been waiting for, Joey. This is some interesting information. I don't know if you mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago on the show, but it's something you said recently, because it's information that's being reported right now that we're getting from publicly traded companies that have been buying up one of the Bitcoin.
Yeah, 13 Fs are being filed. They have to be filed before the end of Q2. So I wrote that in the newsletter 2 weeks ago. You're right.
And so on Twitter, I read those newsletters, by the way, Joey. It's being reported that several U.S. banks, and not the big ones that you and I know by name, but they have been buying up IBIT, GBTC too, and other types of Bitcoin ETFs. And the value of these buys, they're in the range of several $100,000 each. So nobody is aping in, but they are putting a decent chunk of change into these ETFs individually and collectively as well. And it's ironic they're doing this, because considering that these banks are the ones that are most likely to fail now that the BTFP program has ended. So I'm wondering if they're just basically a last-ditch effort to keep everything afloat. Hope for Bitcoin pump to happen and then sell the ETF and, use that capital just to keep things running. I just find it interesting that a company that is so highly associated with fiat, in this case, a commercial bank or any bank, in the United States, they're buying up Bitcoin, at least the ETF. I don't know. I know you were talking about this. You wrote about it. So I want to hear your thoughts about it. I'm pretty sure you have lots of an interesting opinion on it.
So surprisingly, I don't. And the only reason I don't is because I don't think that the banks buying it, to me, until you hear on a quarterly earnings call or something why, you're really just speculating. It'd be crazy if one of these regional banks was like, yeah, we need this as insurance. Like that would be significant. But I don't think that's the case. I think that I want to see like a major company, corporation, or one of the sort of named banks in the States buy this stuff at a pretty solid clip before I celebrate the 13F filings. But I do think that's the signal, and that kind of does cut through a lot of the noise about, these FinTwit accounts talking about Bitcoin down on word that the world is ending, even though it's insurance against the world ending. Like, the Bitcoin spot price is the only thing trading Sunday afternoon. So, unless you're in oil, gold, or Bitcoin, everything else is closed basically. And that's where you're going to see risk expressed, even if it doesn't necessarily reflect the nature of the asset. That's just the way things are in Bitcoin. We're gonna have to deal with that for the rest of its existence. As far as these other 13Fs, I mean, there's a number of them coming out over the next quarter. The thing to note is that now the starting gun has gone off. I think in the newsletter I noted that, I think it was Macroscope who tweeted this out, but the one sort of speed bump to all this is who's going to go first, who's going to be the first to announce. And so we've seen now a couple of banks, a few other filers come out and say, here's what we got. We bought 100,000 shares, blah, 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 whatever. And I'm looking forward to seeing who else announces more than anything else, because I think there's more people thinking about this than before. And don't forget, Len, one of the reasons banks might be buying is because, as we mentioned here in Canada, Fidelity, for example, talking about adding big spot Bitcoin ETFs to some of their conservative, basically like ETF vehicles, ETPs. I wouldn't be surprised if that's why some banks are buying too. They need to have it as part of their exposure profile for some of the products they offer in-house. It's good still. I think we've talked before about how these products are how you get the marginal Bitcoin buyer, someone who would never buy spot, has really no interest in Bitcoin or learning about Bitcoin, but wants a product from a bank they trust, and the bank they trust has a 1% allocation to IBIT or to GBTC or whatever. So it's good. I think it's good. I think the ETFs have broadly been great for Bitcoin. The price now obviously pulling back a little bit, but it's hard to deny that seeing TD put out, I mean, this is from Ledin's team, Maurizio, that DM me the tweet too. And I had to laugh about it. I'm like, it's crazy that 2 years ago, they were debanking companies like Ledin, and now they're running ads about the halving. 2 or 3 years that changed. That's going to continue to go our direction. And I'm psyched about this. I'm wondering, Coinbase's earnings call is like in 3 weeks, I think. So I wonder if they'll talk about it, since they are the ETF holder. I wonder if they're going to talk a little bit about who they think is buying or whatever. Can they talk about it? I'm not sure. Be curious though. That's going to be an interesting earnings call, because it'll be the first one since they started their ETF custody product.
I'm curious though, why nobody's gone down the MicroStrategy path, because
it's too much career risk. That's all. We
well,
talk about, I think that's
really
it.
What's the difference? I mean, aside from, I guess, capital gains, but what's the difference between buying some Bitcoin or the equivalent value for the ETF? If you're doing it just for adding it to your balance sheet, I mean, it gives you it's a different type of buy. One, you're relying on somebody else to manage and hold it and control it. Talk about the ETF versus you, where you could do it and you could manage the keys. So I would say inherently there's less risk if you were to buy spot and just hold on to it. If you understand how to, it's not like,
they just can't do it, right? Like SB has talked about that. They just can't. It's not, there's no legal framework for it. It's
wait.
It's really
there's no legal framework. MicroStrategy's been doing
spot. Yeah, MicroStrategy is its own animal. It's basically Saylor and his cronies, right? Like that's.
But this is a copy pasta thing, because they are a publicly traded company that operates within the walled gardens of the SEC. No, if they can do it, anybody can do the exact same thing that they're doing.
That's where I think you're wrong, because you have to get your board on board, and the boards of other significant treasury publicly traded companies are made up of people who are all defensive and conservative in their approach to the treasury, because if the treasury suffers thanks to their decision making, it's their career that they're risking. If the treasury suffers after Saylor, if Saylor does it and the treasury suffers, Saylor was a relative unknown before, he'll become a relative unknown after, and that's it, right? He returns to the dust from whence he came, and that's all there is to it for him. But if someone like Ackman, for example, is on the board for a few publicly traded companies, if Ackman suddenly comes out and is like, hey, we need to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, we have to issue equity to do this, we're going to dilute all the shareholders and sell them on.
I didn't frame this right. In terms of what they're purchasing, in terms of ETF, why not just buy the equivalent of that? So instead of aping into fucking Bitcoin, you're just buying a little bit. You're buying a little bit of ETF. No, I'd rather ride the spot. Same deal.
Yeah.
Right? It just gives you more control. It gives you more flexibility.
I don't think it's the same deal. I think there's a lot of legal cloud over spot and holding. Don't forget, MicroStrategy doesn't custody either, right? Coinbase custodies for them.
They do for them, yeah.
Yeah.
It may be time to modernize things and to show that to the world how to properly do it. Somebody
I would
CBP.
I'm just saying, I wouldn't hold your breath. I mean, our board is me and you, so we don't have to make any decisions.
We gotta go public. I think it's time to go public and show the fucking world how this thing is done. Not what we're talking about. Let's talk about a company, Metaplanet. I think it's a good segue to this. I'm not sure if you heard of these guys before, and I'll probably forget about them next week too, because it's a Japanese company. They started off as a budget hotel operator, and now they've transitioned to a Web3 company. I'm not quite sure how this fucking transitions to that, but hey, it worked for them. Anyways, for the time being, they're the topic of discussion. Why? Because they have added some $6.5 million of Bitcoin to their balance sheet. And it's interesting because when this news was announced, their stock price within 2 or 3 days jumped 90%. And the only thing that they announced was they purchased some Bitcoin and added to their balance sheet. It reminds me of Neelam Resources Part 2. Not sure if this is the same thing, but either way, they say that they're trying to minimize their exposure to the yen. And their timing of that was really good, because if you look what happened to the yen in the past few trading days, hasn't been doing all that well. So in terms of the reaction of investors seem to have loved this type of announcement. It could be another Neelam Resources pump and dump, but hopefully Metaplanet, they have the necessary resources to make sure this is not a pump and dump. I don't know what the fuck's going on over there, but investors love it. But the fact that it's done like this, I'm wondering if other companies are going to follow suit, right? Like, you have a company that simply just announces we're buying Bitcoin, 6.5 million. It's a decent amount. Stock price jumps 90%. Now, why can't other companies do that? And then also raise the same type of hoopla, and then their valuation of their company goes up just because there's a lot of jazz surrounding that. Like, by the way, the CBP added some Bitcoin again this month. So if anybody wants to talk, we bought the dip. We'll continually buy the dip, or even fucking the highs. We don't give a shit. But anyways, story for another time. But yeah, there you go. Like, investors, for whatever reason, love this type of news. This company jumped 90% in value. Why? Just because they bought Bitcoin. So maybe this is going to give reason for other companies to do the same thing.
Man, I don't know anything about. I know nothing about this company. It sounds like you know nothing about them either. Like, I don't know.
I'll forget about them by next week, guaranteed.
I don't know anything about them at all. I just, again, like, it harkens back to during the run up in like 2018, 17, 18, companies like Polaroid or Kodak, whatever, becoming like blockchain companies. Long Island Iced Tea becoming Long Island Blockchain. Like, these guys, I guess that
Oracle,
the balance sheet. Oracle never did it though. They never.
I know. Do you remember that though? That
I remember. Larry Ellison was like our god for like 3 quarters worth of earnings calls in a row after Elon bought. We're like, oh my god, this is the day Oracle's going to buy. And this guy's probably in his house like, what is wrong with these guys? What's going on the internet here? Anyway, I wish everyone the best in Meta World or whatever that
Metaplanet, man.
Metaplanet, whatever
right. I'll forget
the company's called.
Don't commit that to memory.
I don't know what to make of all this. I mean, who's buying companies like Metaplanet based on 6 million in Bitcoin added to the treasury? I don't know. Not me, not you. I don't know who's doing it, but somebody.
Who's buying meme coins? Who's fucking generating these meme coins?
I don't know.
Oh my god! But you know what? I get it's the same type of investor, and it's kind of involved in those things. They're looking at it.
Probably.
I like Metaplanet coin too. I'm gonna invest in that as well and fucking run with it. We should have did that, by the way. Anyway,
I just want to start. I want to run a stream of just like the most foul language Solana token tickers. Like some of them are just unbelievable. Unbelievable how good they are.
You will get canceled.
Immediate strikes, cancellation.
No, it's not just strikes. It's cancel culture will fucking get you.
Oh, some of them for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
they're
absolutely brutal. I know.
Nasty stuff. So definitely something you can't repeat in public or even in private settings too, depending on who you're
Your phone's
to.
listening to you for sure. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I only think about them. That's as far as I go. One more story, I think, maybe
Sure.
two. Anyways, so some interesting news about people that attended the 2022 Core Dev Atlanta event. And this is an event where Luke Dashier, Jr., I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce his name. Anyways, he attended that event. And also attended with some guy named Mike Schmidt. And it's not the greatest third baseman to ever played baseball. No, it's some Bitcoiner. Maybe he's the same guy. I don't even know, but I don't think it was. Anyways, the FBI wanted info about the people at the conference because, this happened shortly after Luke's stolen Bitcoin saga took place.
Yeah.
If you remember, he was storing it on his NES. And all this info, it's, they said the FBI was telling them, you can't disclose this information to the public, according to the FBI. But 1 year expired, so this guy, Schmidt, came out and revealed what he knows. Oh, Mike Schmidt is with Brink. So the info with the FBI, they were seeking on attendees, their information, GitHub usernames, first and last names.
That's the scary one.
Email addresses. So I guess moving forward, a lot of people out there are going to probably use the pseudonym Pablo. That's the name I like to use. And there's probably going to be a spike of Pablos within the Bitcoin community. So if you come up to me and you see me in public, remember I'm Pablo. But this whole thing is really fishy too. Like there's something that's it doesn't smell right with me because with this whole stolen Bitcoin fiasco, was it the PGPs were compromised or something? I can't remember the specifics what happened to Luke, but either way, man, this is something else. It's leaving a sour taste in my mouth. And I don't know what to make of this, but it's fucked up, man. And for anybody that's going to be attending conferences, be very careful what information you put down. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, same. I don't really have much to add except like the conferences are a weird honeypot. And I say this, of course, in advance of having played around to talk about the Canadian conference. They are a bit of a honeypot because, there's a lot of different places where you can get got during a conference. You're staying in a hotel or an Airbnb, you're driving in, you're renting a car, you have your, conference data, your purchase data, all that stuff, right? You're going to the bars with all the people from the conference. You're wearing Bitcoin gear around. Like the OPSEC's not great. Let's just call it what it is. That's in the best case scenario. But then when you factor in that the feds might just come knocking and be like, give me the guest list and make sure you give me everyone's GitHub name too, because if you don't, you're going to jail for an undetermined amount of time. How do you fight that? What do you do? Maybe the basement was the move, Len. You might have been ahead of your time here. We gotta reconsider our security model.
I'm a trendsetter in so many ways people don't understand. Velvet suits for everybody, 25-year-old cars for everybody, and
wearing shorts in the winter every day.
Oh,
my
fuck,
car
I wear
died,
year-round,
by the way.
man.
My car's dead. It's dead. It died.
I got mine back.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm very
my
happy.
car died, and your car.
So what happened to yours? I'm curious.
I was driving it to work on Friday afternoon, and I got to the end of my street, and it died at a red light. And just the RPMs went to 0. All the lights went on. I was lucky I was able to start it and turn it into a parking lot. I was like adjacent to a parking lot. And then yesterday, I called the tow truck to get it to get the guy to drop back in my house. It's about 750 meters from my front door. And I got in the car, I started it, and I said to the guy, just follow me. I have to blow through every stop sign because if I stop, the car's gonna seize up again. So I did. I blew through every stop sign, and the car made it to my driveway. But you should see the RPMs, like just.
You know what you have to invest in is one of those scanners, OBD.
I know. Everyone.
I
says
have
this
one.
To me. Yeah.
In my the pocket of my door.
We used to mess around with it at work. I think it was yours that I put on my Volkswagen back in the day when I couldn't figure out why the engine light was on.
And so I've actually become proficient with it. I could plug it in while driving because if I drop the hammer on my car for a significant amount of time, I get in an overboost situation and it throws a code. So the only way to clear it, then it goes into limp mode. The only way for me to clear it is I have to plug that in and clear. So I could do that while driving. I could actually plug it in, clear the code while driving, get the code gone. So yeah, that thing, it's handy and it saved me hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And it doesn't cost all that much. I got this years ago for maybe $100 from.
They're probably
higher.
cheap now. They're probably cheap now. Yeah.
So it's definitely worth it to consider, and it's get it and learn how to read and clear codes, and then fuck it, you get a code, even if it's severe, fuck it, just clear it. You're good to go. So if it starts and goes, it's all right. Sometimes that's all you gotta do is just clear it, and we'll just keep on moving. But at the very least, you could diagnose what's the problem.
That's what you want, right? And like I whatever, this would be good after show content, but I'll just say it. The place I brought the car to, I won't name the place because I don't know if it was their fault or not. Oh, I suspect it was. I can't fill my gas tank now. So they had to drop the tank to get at the fuel pump to replace it a few weeks ago. And I didn't put any gas in it for a couple weeks. I barely drive the car. I went to put gas in last week. Can't fill it past like 60%. It will not take any more gas. And so I said to my dad, I'm like, you ever seen this before? He goes, no. And he took it up to his mechanic while it was still drivable. And that mechanic up on the mountain is like, is a hack job. Like these guys, there's oil all over the place. They didn't really diagnose like any other problems. Like it needs a lot of work, right? That car needs like bushings and stuff. Like it's on its last legs anyways. But if I had known that all that work needed to be done, I wouldn't have given these guys $2,000 to fuck up the car even more. And so now, the pump they replaced, clearly not working. The gas tank they put back, clearly not doing the right thing. It's clearly not reading properly with the nozzle at the pump. And I got to call him tomorrow. The guy called me today and left a message. But I'm going to call him tomorrow.
So it's just like the sensor showing it's not full. Like it may be physically full, but
it's not full. It's not full. It's not full. There's not enough money going in there.
Oh, okay.
So it's not full
or something.
Who knows? But the problem is that it wasn't doing that before. It is doing it now. And that the problem I took it there for is still happening. So what did you charge me for?
Yeah.
Like I'm out $2,000 on labor and parts. And anyway, doesn't matter. These are first world problems.
They are. You got to get a car you can just piss in the tank. And
I'm using my dad's right now, but I'm going to buy like I don't know, some kind of $20,000 car or something like that. But we'll see. Anyway, stay here.
We'll transition to the
stay here if you're on audio or video, I should say. And if you're not, then just hang on till tomorrow for the audio second part. And we'll see you then.
Yeah, don't be a cock.
102.03. That's good. Good timing. Okay, where do you want to go for notables here?
Okay, we'll start off with the Persian rug pull story.
I don't know what this is. I have no idea what this is, I don't think.
Well, Iran.
Okay.
They attacked Israel. And I don't want to talk too much about this, but I just want to say that obviously this impacted the price of Bitcoin significantly. And I know this could have been a Bitcoin story, but this is more of a notable news if you think about it, because there seems to be, we're one step closer to a worldwide conflict. How close we are to it, I'm not exactly sure, but we're certainly closer today than we were 2 days ago. And for those unaware, anybody living under a rock, it was Iran. They launched some drones against Israel, and obviously that's created a whole bunch of buzz throughout the world. And man, oh man, what I found interesting, specifically to do with the Bitcoin price, though, is that it went down. It went down on a Sunday, I think it was, or Saturday, either one, Saturday or Sunday. It was the weekend where markets were closed. I would have loved to have known what would have happened if markets were open and an ETF was, those spot ETFs were being traded.
That's exactly why I said that before. Yeah.
And that's number one. Number two, a lot of volume, people were selling en masse. People were buying en masse too. Well, Bitcoin was reporting that I think 85% of their transactions were buying that day. And so a lot of people wanted to buy the dip. Coinbase stayed up for some reason. It's interesting because Bitcoin price goes up. Volume is, negligible. Bitcoin price as a Coinbase fucking drops. Not once, not twice, but thrice, I believe. Bitcoin price goes down significantly. Volume is fucking through the roof. Coinbase stays up. Kraken died. Kraken was down for quite a while, but Coinbase, what the fuck? Like, how did they stay up through this? Did they mysteriously fix the fucking server issues just in time for this? Like, fuck, like, why couldn't you guys go down to that? I just wanted to note that. But man, this is like the whole thing. I don't want to make it too much about Bitcoin. It's just, we are much, much closer to a worldwide conflict now that, the United States, their affiliation with Israel, Russia, their connection with Iran, they've certainly gotten closer the past few years, especially since their conflict with Ukraine. So this is fucked up. And now with Joe Biden out there, is he like
Joe Biden?
Can't even pronounce his name. Is he a wartime president? I don't know. Is he?
He's
one
a
that is
nap time
gonna-
president. What do you mean? This guy doesn't fucking. He's asleep at the wheel, buddy. What are we talking about here?
They got to give him ice cream, but is he the guy that's going to be able to smooth over tensions globally? I don't know, man. Like, this is messed up. But I know what the thing I'm going to be doing. I'm not going to be buying real estate. I'm not going to be buying gold, even though the price is going up. I'm buying Bitcoin. But I want, anything you want to add to this? Oh my God! Somebody fucking wrote the thing in the chat. I don't even fucking say it, but
oh no, I can't. I'm not looking at that. Okay, listen. I would just say that if, like I said earlier, when we were talking about this ETF thing and the price or whatever, if the market was open when that missile story launched, no pun intended, everything would have been down by 10%. Everything would have been down. I mean, not 10%, but like you wouldn't get a limit down, but you get like 2 or 3% probably in the S&P and in most major stocks, and everything except Raytheon would have been down. And so people who are like, oh, the rug got pulled on Bitcoin, it's not a good hedge. It's the only way to express risk on a Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon, whatever. Like there's no other market open to sell at that time. And so people who have Bitcoin are selling. That's all. It's nothing to worry about. We've been through this before. Remember COVID when the stock market was going limit down? There's no fucking circuit breaker on Bitcoin. It's dropping 40% in like 4 hours. Like that's what happens. That's all there is to it. You got to be ready for that if you're a Bitcoiner. And although I do think that most of the time it's going to be safe to say that 50% drops and whatnot are basically done and out of the question now. Those drops on weekends of 7 or 8% when Joe Biden says something that he shouldn't have said or slips going up the stairs of Air Force One or whatever, like, yeah, that's going to sting. But you got conviction, don't you, Anon? Like buy a little more. Who cares? Doesn't matter.
Hey, we did it to CBP.
Yeah, hang in there. No big deal. It's funny. The Bull Bitcoin CBP chat lights up every time this.
It's lit up all the fucking time. But
I know.
So the question is, do you think the U.S. are going to do anything? And if they do,
no,
are they going to be
no, come on, they can't.
Are they just going to be sending Boeing planes and having them fly circles around them and hoping one of them drops out of the sky? Because that's the easiest way to fucking launch something.
Just dropping door bombs on crowds of
engines, anything, right?
Wings falling off. I mean, look, there's something to be said. I know I was just about to say that it's unlikely because there's an election, but incumbents love wars because it provides a sort of unification effect, right? People will unify even behind a bad president if there's a war. Look no further than 9/11 and George W. Bush, right? Arguably one of the worst sort of spoken presidents of the modern era before this guy. And, he won 2 terms. So I think there's something to be said about that. The problem I think that the US has is that they're not focused. Like it doesn't seem like the foreign powers who were being kept in line by the threat of US military action care anymore. So, I mean, can they fund Ukraine and Taiwan and Iran and can they do it? I don't know.
No.
Maybe. War is inflationary, as everyone says, right? And so not without pumping my bags, I guess, which is a silver lining in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of foreigners and good U.S. men and women. Sad to say, but that's the state of affairs in the world today, right? Everyone is worried about their bags. No one seems to be worried about their bodies, but both going up in terms of NGU. So, yeah, I don't know. Let's pay attention to it, I guess. But what else can you say, really? It hasn't been that long, right? It's only been 2 days. So let's see what happens the next week or so.
I'm sure that they'll find the right time to do something. I'm talking about Israel. It only makes sense, and I'm not trying to justify what the reaction, but that's just a reality. That's the way things happen. You launch an attack on somebody, it's just a matter of time before you get it back. And Israel has the resources to do it, and they could do it covertly. They could do it like just they have the means, they have the resources. They'll be able to do it. And in terms of how drastic retaliation is going to be, that's up for grabs. But the United States, I just wanted to just look at them really quick. In the past 2 decades, they haven't won a war, right? It's been they
didn't win in Vietnam either. Like they didn't win. They haven't won in forever. The Afghanistan war was a disaster. Iraq.
No, there's 2 different things. Iraq, both of them, they won. They won convincingly. The army is not there to rebuild. The army is there to obliterate, and they did that. They obliterated it both times. So those were 2. They met their objectives.
Those aren't the state. I mean, in Iraq, I mean, don't forget the name of the second Iraq war, the Operation Iraqi Freedom. Like, it wasn't Iraqi Obliterate, it was Iraqi Freedom. Is that a dub for them? Like, I don't think so. I realize what you're
think
saying. I realize the goal in practice is actually just go in there and fuck shit up for 5 years. Yeah.
We've heard it many times. The U.S. Army is terrible at rebuilding, and they're terrible at having people stationed there and rebuilding. It's been decades since they've been able to.
The U.S. Army is really good at coming back with PTSD and living in a tent until you die of a drug overdose. That's what the U.S. Army is really good at. And it's shameful that they're doing that. And they seem to be on track to start doing that again in earnest in the next few years. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that affects cohesion over there, already suffering in a major way. I thought I heard the other day, this is a bit far up for you and I to talk about, but one of the reasons drone warfare has proliferated so much and will continue to proliferate isn't necessarily because it's sort of easy and technologically available now, but rather because there's just so little interest in joining the military in the first world that they don't have any choice but to go through drone warfare.
Could be.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you it's also very effective too. Look at what's going on with Yemen. And I'm not sure how many drones they're using over there, but they're using a lot of homemade stuff.
Yeah.
And they're able to they're able to significantly reduce the amount of traffic going to the Suez Canal. And if you got just a bunch of guys with homemade rockets able to do this, to nullify the U.S. Navy and other navies out there that have so much resources behind them, it just goes to show you that warfare could easily be it's changing. It's not like how many ships you have, how many nukes you have. It's how many drones you have too. And,
it's the asymmetry between the cost of production, right? Like, the U.S. war machine is so full of bureaucratic red tape and nonsense that, producing a Patriot missile, what a name, by the way, costs $1 billion. Yeah, costs $1 billion. I mean, that number's way off. It's probably like 10 million or something like that. But to take one down, the desert warfare crew spends 10,000, and you can't keep making that trade over and over again without losing. You have to figure something out, right? And that asymmetry is going to come home to roost, I think, in the next little while too. This is the first hot war that we've had where we've seen some first world flexing in terms of what their capabilities are, right? And I think that it's been met with a lot of underwhelming results, don't you? Like, how are things going in Ukraine? Terribly. They don't seem to have a handle on the Israel-Palestine thing. They're sure as shit not going to get a handle on the Iran thing. And you mentioned the Suez Canal too, and the Yemen Houthi, it's not good. They're stretched too thin. Everyone knows it. If the U.S., was as thin on the world stage as they are in the McDonald's lines, they'd be in a lot better shape. But they're not. They're very thin abroad in terms of military strength and military deployment capability, and it shows. It's starting to show.
Let's transition to gold quickly.
Sure.
The price of gold. This is something that
I'm going to be going like this the whole time. Hey, everyone needs a bit of gold. Hey, paisan. Gesù, Giuseppe Maria.
We normally make fun of gold because
who's we? I don't make fun of it. I just think Bitcoin's better. It's the faster horse. I don't make fun of it.
I have, and
my God.
I used to be a gold bug, but then what happened with the repatriation or the inability to repatriate gold to Venezuela and Russia changed my tune. And anyways, we make fun of them, at least I do, man. But it's now starting to move in terms of the price, and it's up some 22% in the past 6 months. And it's also up 10% alone, or almost 10% in the past month. And this type of swing in the Bitcoin world happens all the time, but in gold world does not happen often, but it's going right now. It leads me to believe, and I guess a lot of others, that there's some big entities out there that are scooping up and stacking gold.
I just wrote about this 2 weeks ago in the letter. There's tons of Eastern banks, state and otherwise, are buying this stuff up.
Yeah, it's not jabronis like you and I, retailers like us.
No.
It's big entities that have the ability to print money or have access to big money. And so this is really fucked up stuff. And even if you want to go a little bit further down this rabbit hole, silver too is also doing well. It's actually outpacing gold.
Yeah.
And if you want to break it down further, silver is up 26% in 6 months and 13% higher in the last month. Both of those numbers are higher than what's happening with gold. And between this, we also have Japan's yen weakening significantly in the past while, bonds getting out of whack. And
Yeah.
it seems like something is going to break. You know, you look at all these things individually, they're interesting. Collectively, though, it's like something's up here. And if something breaks, hopefully you have a hard asset you could rely on, like Bitcoin.
I think it's important, and I don't know what's going to break, but there seems to be some potential for what I would call like an upward spiral almost, right? Where you're seeing like the price of gold move in a way that's not healthy in terms of its relationship to economic stability, political stability, which a lot of people say is what it truly hedges against, not, you know, debasement, but rather stability issues. And then when you also talk about the relationship with rates, I mean, have you seen the alligator jaws stretching with rates? When you see rates go high like this, or stay low, I should say, or I can't remember the nature of the thing, but like the relationship is supposed to be inverse of the other. And instead we're seeing this like widening, right? And I don't know, like when I think about the Bitcoin gold ratio, if there is such a thing, we usually move a lot faster and a lot harder and a lot more violently when gold makes moves up. When gold breaks 2,400 again in the next couple of hours, you know, I was looking during the show here at the price of gold, it's back up to like 2,380 or something. When it gets to 24, 25, 26, like, are we like a week away from, I shouldn't say a week, but like, if you had to guess this year, Len, are we going to get like $100 gold day or $1,000 gold day? Or because with the wars and with money being debased at this record pace and inflation seeming to tick up again in the United States, like it just seems to me like there's room for gold to just hit like an everyone gets it moment, like we talk about in Bitcoin. And, you know, whether I like gold better than Bitcoin or not, there's a lot of people who like gold quite a bit. And, you know, I think the Bitcoiners are guilty of having this issue where they talk about gold, you know, gold moved 1%. That's crazy, blah, blah, blah. Like Bitcoin moves 1% in an hour. No big deal. 1% in gold is like the entire market cap of Bitcoin. You guys like, do people realize that? Or you know,
No,
that's it's an overstatement, but like for Bitcoin to move at the same rate gold is, you know, like some of these small-ish gold moves in terms of percentage would require enormous market cap jumps in Bitcoin. And so it's something to watch when gold moves, whether we agree or disagree with that camp. We're fighting the same battle. And if one is moving, I think you can expect Bitcoin to move too. It's kind of been a laggard the last few weeks, but I think it's going to eventually pop back up.
Well, you know what? There's another story about gold. I think it's a good time to bring it up because we talked about Costco selling gold some time ago, selling gold bars, and CNBC published a story, and they're indicating that Wells Fargo estimates that Costco is selling somewhere in the vicinity of $100 to $200 million of gold bars a month. That's Costco United States. And they've only started just selling these gold bars in the latter half of 2023. And we discussed this at length in the CBP archives. Check it out if it's still up. So what you could buy with the gold, if you're a U.S. citizen or U.S. Costco member, these 24 karat gold bars, they say the item is non-refundable because, you know, Costco has this wonderful refund policy where you can bring back a mattress from 20 years ago, they'll take it, but they're not going to take back the gold bars for obvious reasons. They're saying it's a limit of one transaction per membership with a maximum of 5 units for every U.S. Costco member. This is up from 2 per member. So initially, when they first started selling gold bars, they were only selling 2 per member max. Now it's up to 5 per member. So they've increased this number. In Canada, it's a little bit different. You could do 1 transaction every 7 days per membership, but a maximum of 2 units per Canadian member. So even if you buy, you know, 1 this month, 1 next month, they're not going to sell you more than 2 units per Canadian membership. That's it. So yeah, a lot of people they're buying this gold from Costco. It's from what I could tell, it's around a 2% premium from what they're selling it from what spot price is, which I'm not sure if that's reasonable or not, but that's what Costco's selling it. But people are buying this at a pretty good clip. They're hard assets, but good luck transporting this shit. And how much time before Costco starts selling Bitcoin, or maybe Walmart starts selling Bitcoin? Like if they're selling these hard assets, why not sell something else like
high quality engagement farming those tweets? But Costco will probably not sell Bitcoin for a while. I do think though, Len, if you look at who shops at Costco, you know, that's not really the person you would have expected to be buying ounces of gold, right? Doesn't that say something to you that like people who are going there to buy I was there on Sunday, shopping carts full of toilet paper, soil, and granola bars.
Throw in this $2,400 1 ounce gold bar.
Gold. Yeah. It's pretty
in.
crazy, right? That people are buying this stuff at such a clip that obviously the demand was high enough that they increased the total number you could purchase, right? I think the number they gave is 200 million. I would expect it to go up, wouldn't you? I mean, the price of gold's going up, so that number's going to rise naturally. But I think the demand is there. People realize, like, man, I got to get some of this stuff before it's too late or it's not being sold or whatever. It's not good. I've said this so many times on the show that the problem I think governments have isn't necessarily one of policy. I think the policy has always been spotty. But the thing they excelled at was narrative. Me and you couldn't go somewhere and get information and then have an honest conversation with real data and say, like, man, there's problems here with inflation. I'm being sold a false bill of goods, 3%, but my milk's up to $8 a bag or whatever it costs now. Now the narrative thing is really going sideways on them. So much so that people at Costco are buying gold bars. Like, that to me, signpost, man, plant it. Like, this is one of the signposts on the road to, in really problems with inflationary pressures, right? And inflationary expectations. That's saying something to me.
Well, let's talk about another signpost, because Australia, there's a bank over there, TFTC, was commenting on this, and not just a bank in Australia, but also one in Canada. I'll talk about
I love that. I watched that clip like 5 times.
I'd love to hear your thoughts, because, well, the one in Australia is interesting because it's a woman. She approached her bank looking to withdraw some cash, and she went in and she was told there's no cash to be given out. And it's funny because she was interviewed by these panel of news journalists, and they were asking, like, what's going on? Like, what happened? Yeah. And so this lady was saying that, they just simply don't have cash anymore. And these guys were asking, why can't they just simply go in a vault? Well, the reality is they just don't carry it. They're now going to a cashless system. Everything is going to be digitized. And right. So good luck buying KYC-free Bitcoin in that situation. And also TFTC also tweeted out a Canadian bank was doing the same thing, where they were preventing somebody from withdrawing $3,000 so they could buy, I think it was a car or something, like whatever it was.
It was a car off a buddy. Yeah, it was a car off a buddy. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were trying to get $3,000 simply to just purchase the car, but the bank was preventing them from doing this. It's your money, like, you worked for it, you deposited it into the bank so you could have access to it in the future, and they're preventing you from getting the physical version of that money. Man, that's scary stuff. But you know what? This was predicted. It's now happening sooner than I thought was going to happen. So it's pretty fucked up.
It's insane, man. The way that the teller at RBC talks to the guy who goes in and wants $3,000. $3,000's not even that much. Like $3,000 is a mortgage payment, right?
That's a what is it? One buggy full of Costco items, right? Right, let's be honest.
Not quite, but yeah, I hear what you're saying, right? You are getting a lot of pressure from both sides of the equation there. Look, the Canada one is the one that I watched, and the way that the teller talks to the guy, Len, is incredible to me. Like the disdain she has for the guy who's like, that's $3,000. I just want $3,000 in cash. Well, do you have a note from your friend saying you're buying his car? He's like, it's like a note. What good is, who cares about the note? Like, just give me the money. And she's like, no, I'm not going to give it to you. And to the guy's credit, he's like, I'm not leaving here until I get the money. I think this is shameful, embarrassing, ridiculous, but expected. Anyone who's been to a bank to pay for a major home rental project or pay for a car or whatever, they always want to give you a bank draft. They never want to give you cash. I had to get my roof done a couple of years ago and paid in cash. And the bank teller gave me a hard time just the same way. Well, why don't you take a draft? I don't want a draft. I want cash. I want $10,000 in cash. Give it to me in bills. Like, I'm not asking you for a bank draft. Oh, well, bank drafts are less likely to be frauded. I don't need to be, I don't care about the fraud. The roof is on my house already. Like, I just need the money now. Okay. Like, it's not a problem. This guy went through the same thing for a third of the money, Len. That's really the big story. That's not much cash, So what is the threshold now that banks are going to ask for that information on? Is it 3,000? Is it 1,000? What is it? It's crazy to me that people just go through this. And I tweeted today that, like, a lot of people will say, oh, they have to do this for fraud. Like, that's the fucking problem. and you're the fucking problem. Stop accepting this behavior. This is not acceptable. It's your money. Did you earn it? Did you work for it? Did you store it with them? Then you should be able to get it anytime you want for any reason. If you want to dance around in your room and film it in slow motion while the cash falls from the fucking ceiling, they got to let you have it. It's all there is to it. There's no other questions to be asked. But we're in this mode now where everything is fraud prevention and safety, and we got to make sure, we got to double check. You got to give us a receipt. You got to give us an invoice. I don't have to give you anything in Bitcoin. That's the way it should be.
Let's talk about this Yahoo News story about what's going on in San Francisco. This story, Joey, is absolutely bonkers. Okay, so this the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. I want to get on that board, by the way, because of what they're trying to institute here. I got to get in. They're considering a remarkable policy that would allow people to sue the grocery stores should they close too quickly. I'm not talking about closing in the day. I'm talking about shuttering doors.
Shutting the doors, yeah.
And say that's it. So in this case, they're trying to make a case that if a grocery store closes too soon, people could sue. So you have to operate within good faith. And so what they're saying is the notice of closure has to be 6 months, although there could be some exceptions granted, but 6 months at least is got to be the minimum that you have to announce you're going to be closing
Completely
and
insane.
shutting. So
Completely
they're
insane.
saying should stores close without proper notice, people who are impacted by this closure, they will be entitled to sue the closed store for damages. Now, this is totally bonkers because if you are a store, if you've opened up in a particular area and you want to do business over there, you obviously are doing so in good faith. You want to make money. You want to serve the community. You want to stay open. You're not just there to open up and close within a month because obviously that is very costly and it may tarnish your reputation in doing so. But the reason why these stores are closing is because of the unsafe environment, which is San Francisco these days, between drugs, crime, insurance going up, all this shit. It piles on to these store owners that they just cannot operate in this environment. It's no longer
loopy.
profitable to do so.
It's absolutely loopy, this whole thing.
And now you have to give 6 months notice. It's not like you're leaving a job and you're giving 2 weeks notice, 6 months. And if you do that, what the hell's going to happen in that 6 months? So these people, they created an unsafe environment, and now they're forcing stores to give a long lead time before they're going to close shop. What this is going to do is going to encourage stores not to open up over there. If you're a franchise, say McDonald's or anything like that, and you have an opportunity to open up one more store in San Francisco, you're going to say, fuck that. I'm not going to do it. It's just not worth it. The headache. And so you're going to have a lot of these fucking stores, a lot of these companies, they're going to come up to these realizations. Setting up shop is just a headache that's going to potentially lead to a lawsuit later on should they close up because of any reason. So this type of idea, this type of policy, this type doesn't make sense. You got to let this fucking thing just work on its own. Provide these store owners an opportunity to thrive. Don't fucking set them up for failure and then sue them at the same time for when they want to leave. But that's all I got to say. What a fucked up story this is.
Pretty wild that there's a question at all from politicians or from people in California, San Francisco specifically in this case, about why businesses aren't staying open. Do you not see how dangerous it is there? Like, what are people looking at? Did you watch, by the way, this debate that happened for unknown reasons, honestly, between DeSantis and Newsom a couple of weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now?
Not the two. Yeah, I didn't watch it, but I heard about it.
So to give you some context here, okay? DeSantis pulls up a map of San Francisco, and he's like, have you seen this clip?
No.
He pulls up a chart of San Francisco, and in the chart, it's completely covered in POIs, in plotted points of interest. And he's like, for people who wonder why San Francisco is failing, this chart is pulled from an app where people disclose where there's fecal matter on the sidewalk. And it's literally every square foot of that city. People have been reporting this stuff over the last 6 months. Why do you think people shit on the street? Well, because they're not mentally well. And when you have that kind of dangerous population roaming around, truly zombified in a lot of cases, thanks to the drugs they're on, which in some cases are provided by the state or paid for by the state. What do you expect to happen to stores? You're going to get break-ins, you're going to get robberies, you're going to get theft, you're going to get all kinds of stuff. And broadly speaking, you're going to get people unwilling to do business there. So the business you have is people coming in to steal shit, and the people whose business you want are unwilling to go because it's too dangerous. What do you think is going to happen? Of course, they're not going to go, or they're going to close down. This law about you got to stay open for 6 months. Have you heard anything like this in your entire life?
No,
it's
because
ridiculous.
It doesn't make sense at all. If you have the ability to open up shop, you have the ability to close shop.
It's batshit. And again, it's this idea that you as a business owner owe the government or the people some level of loyalty and honestly some percentage of your bottom line, even though you're not getting anything for it and arguably are being left worse off. Like, that's not how business works. Any smart business person will just go, yeah, no thanks, I'm not going to do business here. Like you said, McDonald's or mom and pops or anyone. And pretty soon people won't live there. And soon after that, there will be no grocery stores for the few people that are left. And you can kind of see where this goes, right? I don't know what the draw is in San Francisco anymore. Like, who's living there and why at this point?
Barry Bonds fans, and I guess a lot of IT, right? Like they
still have There's Silicon Valley.
I'm not sure if they live in a city or if they somewhere else, but I know a couple of years ago, like rent and just housing in general was so fucking expensive in San Francisco, just as a result of the fact that the IT sector was paying people so much money, rightfully so. And so it was driving up the price of homes over there. I'm not sure if it's still very expensive to live over there. I don't know. I have no idea.
I think it is. I'm pretty sure it is.
So imagine
whatever.
You have to pay so much for your housing.
Exactly.
And still you have to live with
the taxes are super high. You can't you can't drive your fucking car. There's nowhere to drive. The traffic is insane all over California. People pissing on themselves and stabbing you in the street. Like, why would you want to raise a family there or whatever? Like, you can't. End the story. There's nothing else to it.
And then the Athletics are leaving to go to Sacramento or something. Yeah. It's just getting worse in the Bay Area.
The Lakers are going to be forced to sign LeBron James' son next year. You can't stay. You can't stay there.
Is they actually doing that?
They might. Listen, tomorrow night, thank God Plate's coming here at 5, because tomorrow night at 7:15 or 7:30, the Lakers are playing the Pelicans in the play-in game, and it's going to be fucking awesome. I can't wait.
The Pelicans.
New Orleans. Do you know LeBron James is in year 21 right now?
Yeah.
He's got more points, minutes, rebounds, assists, steals this year than every other year 21 player ever combined.
Okay.
Pretty good.
That is very good. How many was it offensive player in a year and defensive player in a year?
There's none of that stuff. It's just MVP. He's won, I think, 4 or 5 MVPs. He should have won for like a decade straight, but there's voter fatigue, obviously, like there is in every sport.
Whatever. How many rings does he have?
He's got 5, I think, 4.
Yeah. And the other guy that they compare him to, like
MJ.
Yeah, all he did was win, and he didn't even win it.
Yeah,
didn't he win that 1 year offensive and defensive player of the year?
He did win. He did win DPOY. Yeah,
it's like, how do you do that?
I was firmly in the MJ is better than LeBron camp, but I gotta tell you, Len, like the last year or so, there's a discussion there for sure. One that maybe I am not willing to have right now, but in 5 years, 10 years, when LeBron retires, I can look back on some of the stuff this guy was able to do.
One guy won a lot, and he was mugged for the first few years by like the Pistons and so forth. Like, if you look at the plays, and I'm not much of a basketball fan, but I've seen a lot of the highlights. The guy was, if you do it nowadays, it's cancel culture. You can't even fucking do that.
Yeah, right? Maybe. Can I
So
convince you that? Can I convince you that even Michael Jordan thinks that there's a conversation to be had between him and LeBron, and that's why The Last Dance was released? Famously private guy, suddenly goes through a 6-hour, media release talking about how great his career was and how difficult it was for him to win. I think even Jordan thinks there's a conversation to be had.
Yeah, there's always a conversation, but the reality is, I'm not a huge basketball fan. I'm going to go with the guy that has the most rings and is more, I guess, more rounded as an athlete. He did play AA baseball. You can say what you want about that. He didn't hit all that well, but he stole quite a few bases. To play baseball is a very difficult thing to do when you haven't played baseball before. To play any professional
baseball and basketball are different sports too. Like
they definitely are.
Yeah, speaking from experience, like I'm a basketball player first, but a lot of the skills And even the body type, honestly, translates.
He's a
to
tall,
football.
lanky dude.
Yeah, but doesn't translate to baseball. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And he was able to do decent. Look, he didn't hit all that great, but what fucking experience was he drawing?
You told me you didn't watch The Last Dance. Right?
I didn't.
Okay, so shame on you, number one. Number two, there's a full episode basically dedicated to the transition to baseball and back to basketball. You would love it. You would love it. It's
I
not
probably
just,
would.
It's like the way he treated his body and the training, and Space Jam is mixed in there too, by the way.
I never watched that.
Space Jam is an all-time great movie. But anyway, it's good. You should watch it. People should be honestly like deriding you and spitting on you on the street for not watching.
They spit on me either way. You know what? I gave it an honest effort, and I tried watching it, and within 10, 15 minutes, my mind started to wander. And once that happens, I'm no longer in it, and there's no reason for me to continue doing it. When I'm into something, my mind won't wander. I'm committed to it 100%. But when I start, having wandering thoughts, I know myself. It's just no reason for me to do it. I could power through it, but I'm not going to thoroughly enjoy it. So I'd rather do something else.
Fine.
That's me.
Anyway, let's do a couple more stories here. We're talking too much side content.
Well, you know what? The side content is fun. I fucking talk about that all day, right? Especially old NHL. The Canadian budget comes out tomorrow.
That's big. We could spend some time on this if you want, because I think we should.
Well, I'll just lay the table for you, and you could just drive me in here. So there has been a lot of announcements in the past few weeks, month or so, by the Canadian government. So you had ministers fanning out throughout the country with a whole bunch of different announcements. But this week, there was a couple of interesting ones. Number one, we had this $500 million fund for youth mental health. So decent amount of money, and it's for a decent cause. They're saying many Canadians right now are facing stress and anxiety due to the list is.
What do they put on there? What do they put on the list?
War, geopolitical unrest,
climate change,
absolutely that, and financial strains. So
interesting.
Yeah. So because of a lot of this, young people need access to some sort of support. This $500 million will hopefully provide them with what they need as a way to address these issues. And the second interesting thing that was announced this week is that Canada is going to start allowing 30-year amortization mortgages, but it comes with a caveat here, because it's not everybody's access
insured, right?
Beyond that, it's first-time home buyers.
Yeah, and that, yeah.
Also on new homes. So you're really narrowing down who's going to be able to get. So if you think about this, now I'm using through the lens of myself living in the Greater Toronto area. What's a new home that's going to be available for first-time home buyers? It's going to be condos, pre-construction, right?
Or like these towns, these rocket ship shaped.
For under $1 million. Because
how much? GTHA, yeah. If I look at like Waterdown, which is just adjacent to Burlington here for people who are out of the loop, there's new condos going up for like 800, starting at 800. So, I mean, you're going to be, everything you want to do is going to be on another up another flight of stairs, basically in a town like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking at that. This is specifically for young people who want to get a pre-construction. And I don't think it's really for townhouses, detached, no way, because young people don't have the capital required to qualify for a mortgage, even with 30-year amortization. It's going to be specifically for condos. So maybe this is going to be helping out pre-construction for the next little while, which has been taking a beating.
Yeah.
A lot of people are walking away their deposits, or I'm not sure.
Well, they need to force more supply onto the market, because rates are too high to get capital, and without buyers, like, what do you do? So you have to, again, you're sort of pulling the wrong side of the lever here, but this is what they do, right? So,
well,
kind of
another thing that they announced, which is really good, and I'll throw it over to you, is that they're forcing mortgage lenders to have a direct link to CRA to get access to information. So
they're talking about it.
Oh, I thought this was
not yet implemented. No, but they realize there's a problem. At least they're saying they realize there's a problem.
Yeah, and the rationale for this is because there could be some fraudulent documents out there that is enabling people to getting access to funding. So obviously they have a greater pool of people potentially buying, raising the price. So if you could weed out the people that are fraudulently submitting documents and getting approved, then there's less people out there buying, and you could lower the price of the home. So this is
Yeah.
that's the idea behind it. But yeah, that's basically. I'm not sure if you want to add anything else to this, but that's what happened this past week.
This is like a total joke, right? I think it's a poorly thought out policy, not because the people who are thinking about it are just doing a bad job, but because there's an unwillingness to discuss what the real problem is. The real problem is that there's not enough supply, and that they keep bringing in more demand. There's an unwillingness by both major parties in Canada to say, decisively, we're going to cut immigration or stop it outright, because this is a problem that we're having now. It's causing significant issues in both social cohesion and in economic well-being for a huge number of Canadians of all ages. Without willingness to have that discussion, you have to come down on the side of what basically amount to stimulative policy choices, right? If you extend amortizations, it allows more people to buy houses. More people buying houses pushes prices up. That's not that hard to figure out. The other thing they added was now you can take 60,000 from your RRSP to buy a house instead of 30,000. Well, if I wrote this in the newsletter. This is I think good research from CBP. Honestly, the average price, or the average home buyer in Canada, first time home buyer in Canada now, or in 2022, I should say, was 36 years old. Let's say it's 37 or 38 now. Okay. Just for, I think that's fair. It's not too far out on the curve. Let's say it's 38. You get a 30-year amortization, and you pull your $60,000 out of your RSP. Let's say you had 60,000 in there, probably unlikely, but you pull it all. Are you telling me that you're going to now retire when you're 70-ish years old with 60,000 less in your RSP? Plus,
I think you're forced to pay it back, right? Over 15 years.
You have to pay it back, but don't forget that you're paying it back when you're at a higher marginal tax rate. You're paying it back during your prime earning years now. Instead of paying it back between 25 and 35, you're paying it back between 38 and 50. And so you have this problem where you're taking from all sides in ways that we just never were before. And you're forcing people to work longer. And I wrote in the newsletter, is it like an end around way to ease the burden on the entitlement system, the pension system? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
you put people in these positions where they're,
it's funny with the land value tax, whatever they fucking call it. They just solve every problem with that.
But the honest sort of thing here is like, you have to ask, is there any consideration being given to the second order effects, like making people work until they're 70? And, having to presumably put off family formation until mid 40s. You can't take a mortgage, have $60,000 in debt. And it is debt, by the way, because if you don't pay it back, you have to pay taxes on it like income. And as I mentioned, you're in a higher income bracket, blah, blah, blah. It would really sting, right? If you don't pay your RSP withdrawal back between 25 and 35, it's not going to hurt you as much. Yeah, you'll pay a little income tax on it, but you will own the house. If you are making 90 or 100,000 at 50 and you have to pay your taxes back, well, you're going to have to pay suddenly a $30,000 or $40,000 bill on $60,000. Like, it's going to be expensive. And when they come up with these policies, I just wonder if there's any real consideration being given to these second order effects, because it doesn't seem to me like there is. It makes it very difficult for Canadians. And really, like I mentioned, the price pressure is positive. It's not negative. These are things that will inflate the cost of homes. Everywhere we look all over the world, not just here, but everywhere where there is government support, either policy or subsidy or whatever, to affordability, it just makes the price go up. Government becomes the agency or the body who bridges the gap between what the actual cost is and what the inflated cost is thanks to these programs. Everyone pays the price. And then at the end of the day, if you look down the road 10 or 15 years, these policies, like I wrote in the newsletter, may be moot, because I don't think Sussex is going to be red for too much longer. But the point is that there's, again, this unwillingness to discuss the real problem, which is there's not enough supply and there's way too much demand. The price is a symptom of this problem, but there are other things that would be easier to do, maybe not politically palatable for the moment, but easier. And I appreciate that there's a need for low wage labor by big corporations, but it's really starting to throw things out of whack all over the place. And, listening to Premier Ford today, making a transit announcement in Milton, he's talking too about how Ontario grew by 1 million people the last 2 years. 1 million people the last 2 years. Like, that's a huge number for Ontario. And they're all in the same 100 kilometers, basically from Hamilton to Toronto, Scarborough, whatever, Milton.
That's a huge number for Canada. Never mind just Ontario.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And so that's the thing. And we talk about this all the time. With 1 million people coming in every year of all stripes and designations, in terms of PR, immigrant status and whatnot, they're all going to the same 3 places. It's Vancouver, it's GTA, and it's probably Ottawa, right? Like I don't know where else they'd be. Montreal,
I know
maybe,
they do their own immigration, but
but
probably there's a lot of
they're not landing in fucking Regina, right? And so you have these problems popping up in the major metropolitan areas in the country. The fix is not telling people they can take more of their savings that they don't have or use their home savings account that they have no money to put into. The fix is we got to build more houses and we got to stop. We got to slow the demand. We have to. And there's an unwillingness to do that. And so until that changes, you're going to have the same problems, I think.
Canada, for a number of years, this century, they were letting in about 250,000 people per year.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that is the magic number, but that's what they were doing for a number of years. And, maybe it's time to revert back to that. I'm not sure if, I don't know, just throwing out an idea. Because I know that from COVID, when they shut down the economy, there was a stoppage of immigration. So there was very few people coming to Canada for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And then once things opened up, then they ramped it up to try to catch up what they lost during the closure. But then it seems like they continually increased that number coming in, and here we are. So yeah, it's creating a strain on the housing system. And you see a lot of students here, 7 students living in a basement, for instance. Like there's
7 is conservative. I want to add one more thing before we wrap up.
I have one more thing. I just want to add. I'm not going to be very long. I just want to see if you want to talk about it. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So just one more thing here from the Scotiabank letter. I'm going to write about this in the research report this coming week, because this is obviously a huge story. Scotiabank has a couple of great stats in their letter, and I just want to read you a paragraph here. New imbalances are also emerging. This is a federal budget preview. The federal government has had to lean heavily on corporate taxes, which have doubled in real terms over the past decade, to offset direct program spending that has shot up 40% in real terms over the same period, even as GDP growth has turned out a mere 17% gain. What?
But I want to see what's per capita too. That's probably another one that's missing.
The public sector footprint has grown with expenditures. Operating costs in fiscal year 24 were pacing at 3.6 year-to-date growth through January, despite earlier plans for a contraction. 3.6% growth, plans for a contraction. Those are things not drive. As the rest of the economy normalizes, the federal government will need to right size as it butts up against the limits to its spend then tax approach. There's no money for this, and there's no more taxes to grab. They're at the limit of what's possible unless you just do deficit spending.
So
and,
CBC
that's not feasible.
So you saw the article from CBC. They're predicting that economists are at least predicting that they're going to be raising some taxes in tomorrow's budget as a way to help offset the money that they have.
Who are they going to raise it on? Loblaws?
I don't know.
Is Loblaws the last story?
Yeah, so that may be. I'll just be quick. The grocery store markup. Apparently, there was an exposure on this, and they're raising prices quite a bit. I'm not sure if this is factual or not. This leak, but a lot of things are being marked up.
CBP economist Boomer had a comment on this, because I sent him this story in our CBP chat. We have CBP chats with everybody. He makes a good point. There's some data maybe missing there, but I think the bigger story is that we're kind of in this place now where clearly there is a friction between the public and the corporations, principally the grocery stores, about why affordability is so low. And these guys, we've said in the past, are really low-hanging fruit for the average person. I went to the store today to buy milk, salsa, olive oil, bananas, cherry tomatoes. What else did my wife have me get? I forget. I think that was it. And looking at the prices for some of the stuff, like a bag of milk, I honestly haven't looked at the price. It's $8, $7.99 for 3 quarts of milk. And I don't remember it being more than $6 like 2-3 years ago. And now it's up to that. Bananas are expensive too. We're eating still quite a bit of meat, but we've cut back in a lot of places. I love having, for example, like mini wheats in the house or sugary cereals in the house. I just don't do it anymore because the box of cereal is $10.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I got it on sale the other day. It was like $7, but it's usually $10 for a family size box. Crazy. And it's less than it used to be too, right? Anyway, all this to say that again, the problem isn't necessarily with what's going on in terms of pricing. Pricing could have always been bad. The problem is the narrative now has completely gotten away from the powers that be, whether it's corporations in this case, or the government. And, Weston, I don't think the guy's a bad businessman. He's actually a very good businessman. But he would have to admit that this thing would come apart at the seams if competition was allowed to arrive in Canada and really put down roots. But it's not. And Len, what is your view on that? My view is that the only reason competition is not allowed to exist is because Loblaws lobbies so goddamn hard that there's not going to be anyone else available to come in or able to come in.
Well,
I also read today that one of the big name Loblaws lobbyists is Jagmeet Singh's brother-in-law. Did you know that?
No, that's
so there's ties everywhere, right? Like I expect some level of corruption, or like these sort of offhand relationships after a long time being in government. That's sort of natural. I don't necessarily think those relationships are bad. The same reason I expect like a guy like Donald Trump, right? Everyone's like, oh, look, he knows this person. He's giving this person money. Like, well, he knows everybody. There's always going to be a connection, right? But again, the optics and narrative have really gotten away from the usual players, and now it's starting to cause problems. And the Reddit post that I shared with you guys on the weekend, where they have all Loblaws margins by percentage. What was the markup on butter? It was 50% gross margin on butter, something like that. 35% on sour cream. Like, I don't eat a lot of sour cream, but that's eating pretty good if you ask me.
Remember, not too long ago, Canada was thinking about having some sort of competition bureau set up to try to.
Yes.
So that could be one reason of many that would prevent competition from spawning in Canada. Because if you have stuff like this, while it may theoretically be good for the consumer in the end, it's harder for business to come in and operate in that type of environment. It doesn't seem to be all that friendly if if you're thinking about it. If you go work in a totally free environment versus one that has a lot of constraints, you're probably going to opt to deal with the one that has more freedom.
Yes.
But that's just, again.
And again, like we also talked about how we have like these packaging rules and why companies don't package stuff and send to Canada anymore, right? We talked about the Amazon example, why you get your toilet paper in a box that's the size of a small car. Well, too many people order stuff the size of a small car that day, and that's what they do. But you can't do that in grocery stores a lot of the time. Anyway, it's not good. And I think one of the common themes of the show over the last year and a half has been that you're seeing now sliding in terms of people's willingness to accept the status quo. You can't have that. You really can't have that in a society. You need cohesion, and right now you don't have it. And you're starting to see, as I've talked about before, we've done. I'll try and pick my words carefully for all our sakes. We've brought in a lot of people with a lot of conflict under the surface between different groups, ethnicities, economic statuses, races, whatever. Okay, we've done this. A lot of countries have done this over the years and been successful. And to be honest with you, until recently, we had done it successfully. But the thing that makes it successful is economic success and the promise of a better life if you work for it. Without that, you get protests in the street where people are literally out there all day long, hooting, hollering, and waving flags. You get homelessness and drug addiction. You get lack of family formation, which forces you to bring in more low-wage people because there's no kids being had. And when you have those problems, you get compounding effects. We're just at the tip of the iceberg, I think, Len. If this continues another 10 years, I don't know what a lot of places are going to look like, honestly. I think they're going to look a lot worse.
Have your own garden. That's one way to help.
Have your own garden, have a cold card, and
play some NHL 94.
Brush your football and play some NHL 94. Anyway, okay. God bless everyone. Thanks for coming. Tomorrow, Plate Liquor. Wednesday, Sunnyside Digital, Taurus, and we'll see you when we see you.
Yeah, don't